So it seems like this 4K transfer, okay, it doesn't seem like, for a fact, it took forever to get the rights back because of Harvey Weinstein. And apparently Harvey Weinstein had a lot of shenanigans with shit in Hollywood. Thank God he's gone. Chase Lee Hockey here, the Blue Futon, reviewing Dogma 4K Restoration. So apparently, I didn't know this, that there was kind of a Jay and Silent Bob, but it was like a Dogma roadshow that went through different cities, and Kevin Smith watched this movie twice and did a Q&A for most of the showings, which good for him to do this. I mean, he really didn't have to with his wife and his daughter, so congratulations. But when looking at the 4K transfer, let's talk about that first. It looked good. Not great. There were some scenes like, oh yeah, that looks good. Especially there's a scene where Alan Rickman's on the water. That looks good. A good amount of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck scenes look good. But there's other really grainy ones, especially with, one of the final battle sequences and like Chris Rock, Jason Mewes, Kevin Smith, and all the cast come to Salma Hayek come to where Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did all the killing. It was really grainy there where it's like, I don't know if it was the lighting or how they did the 4K transfer. It just didn't look the greatest, which just makes me wonder, like, what different 4K transfers are there? For example, you look at this, or you look at Jaws 3, or you look at The Searchers, where it's like they all are 4K transfers, but they're so vastly different, which you're just like, is some of it AI? Is some of it a mix of both? Is some of it you just can't fix it, but you say you can't fix it, but there's all these, 1940s movies that look freaking fantastic. So I'd say the 4K transfer for Dogma looks pretty good, but it's nothing like awe-inspiring. Like, that is some fantastic shit. And of course, it could be how it was filmed, what camera, what type of film, etc., etc., because there are a lot of elements to go into these transfers. So it's like one of those ones where I talk about the movie where everyone that knows this movie knows it. Kevin Smith kind of doing one of his different movies. Because if you know Kevin Smith, you have Clerks, you have Jay and Silent Bob, you have his more interesting ones, Tusk, Red State, which Red State is a very underrated film in my opinion. You have the, was it the 410 movie or the 310 movie? If I'm not mistaken. Oh yeah, right there. The 430 movie. Sorry, the 430 movie. And I think he did one more as well. Oh, yeah. Yoga Housers down there. So this is one of his more, popular ones, I would say, when it comes to the cult classic hits where Dogma really shined. Also, getting probably his best cast ever with George Carlin, Alan Rickman, like I said, Jason Mewes, of course, always in all his movies, Kevin Smith himself, Chris Rock, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, of course. I'm totally forgetting Mallrats for another one of his films. Like I said, there's a lot out there of his filmography. And I have to say, when watching like this, Clerks 2, and comparing it to his newer stuff, I do miss this older humor. Because when you rewatch Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, that comedy is gold. Of course, you look at that cast, you go, oh shit, that's a cast galore. Of course, with Will Ferrell, Heather Graham, and all these other people in this movie. But like that humor, like the Click Commander, fucking fantastic. Dogma, I would say it's more, serious humor, but it's not as like over the top with Jay and Silent Bob and Clerks 2, where he does try to do a creative religious movie, but also kind of make fun of religion, especially Catholicism, which is very interesting. Of course, at this time, no one was really thinking about it. But if you can't really make this movie with other religions, just because of everything going on in this world. If you make it with a Jewish thing, they're going to call it anti-Semitic. If you do it Islam, they're going to try to cut your head off. And so you can kind of the same thing with South Park, where it's like they only make fun of few and far between. But when it comes to Catholicism, it's like it feels like it's an open game, which it's not like it's making fun of it. It's asking questions, but also, doing a little bit of poking of fun. I know a lot of people, when they see God as a girl, people get offended. But this movie kind of like says that, well, God can almost be what you think he or she is. But of course, in the Bible, we're going to say, like, if you read the Bible, things like that, Old Testament, New Testament. So it's little things like that where, and even it says a little thing at the beginning of this movie where it's like, have a sense of humor. This is not supposed to be taken seriously. Look at platypuses. God has a sense of humor, but just look at the platypuses. They're just weird freaking creatures. So there's part of that where, you just got to take this with a grain of salt of if you're going to take this movie to be offensive or not. The movie itself, I do think there's good moral dilemmas when dealing with like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's character of getting to heaven or not, Jason Lee's character, Salma Hayek's character, Chris Rock's character, and you have just different like overall aspects of this movie where it's like, okay, I see where Alan Rickman's coming from, I see where Salma Hayek's coming from, I see where some of these characters are coming from with like good metaphors of like when you're younger, your faith is a lot more predominant because it's smaller glass and the world is like your oyster and you're not really thinking of a lot, but you're just thinking, oh yeah, like I believe, and then it's like squirrel, but it's like things like that. But then when real life adulting happens, you see all the negative in the world and all like you could say the insufferable or the inconsistencies. I know that's a weird word to say, but for example, why does Jeff Bezos have all this, no worries in the world, 2 wives, yachts, etc., but then you go to walking down the street and there's meth heads in California and LA and people that are crippled or have no limbs that are trying to live a normal life, yet you're worrying about something so minuscule and you're like, man, I really have a good life. And so it's kind of the things where it's like, how full is your glass and how much liquid are you willing to put into it, or are you kind of a negative Nancy and you're refusing to even try to fill the glass of faith? So it has a little bit of metaphors like that, as well as also like creation versus ideas or belief in ideas, like whole Chris Rock storyline with belief in ideas of things like that, which I think that's a little bit of a smaller storyline in my opinion. But to me, it was the glass, being young and older metaphor, I think works a lot better, or just the talk about it of like, people will have different opinions and different, mythology in their head of what they believe and what they think the right path is. And also, when you look at the Bible and like, how people interpret it, how a lot of interpretations are done by man, not God. And I find that very interesting as well as like, suicide, is that really a Bible thing? Or was that some man in the 1700s said suicide is bad, so if you commit suicide, you're going straight to hell, or you're going to be stuck in purgatory, or things like that, like divorce, cremation, little things like that, where you just kind of have like a little like, you're like, interesting. But this movie does make you think about the smaller pictures and the bigger pictures as well of where are we going to society as well. And I think Dogma does its job. Yes, sometimes does it feel overlong or some of the humor doesn't match the greatest, especially like the shit monster. Yeah, sure, it's funny, but when you're like connecting it to the rest of the movie, there are some things where it's like, okay, yeah, it's funny and you're trying to be a little bit edgy, but some of the humor works and doesn't work overall, in my opinion. I do think this is more of a thinking man's movie, honestly, than humorous movie when dealing with some of the elements personally. Yeah, you get some comic relief here and there, but you can't really compare this to like Clerks 2 or a Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back or a Mallrats. You can, well, maybe Mallrats, you have the Chasing Amy's as well. I say this is more like the Chasing Amy's humor with like the themes as well. But overall, Dogma, I think it does its job right. It has the right messaging, and I think when looking at the big picture of it, it tries to do something different where Kevin Smith tried to open his horizon. Almost like, you could say like this, Chasing Amy and maybe Red State are his like most unique movies. And I really wish he made more like, oh yeah, he also did, Cop Out. He also did that one, but that one's like a weird Kevin Smith movie to even do in general. Like, why did he do that one? He wanted to work with Bruce Willis, and apparently just shit went downhill pretty quick. But like I said, I think this movie does its job, and overall, like just looking at his filmography, if he made another movie kind of like Red State, I would be fucking so intrigued. So Dogma will receive a 4 out of 5 Futons, which equals that to 80%. We'll see the critics and user scores gave this one. So you have critics a 70%, audience score 85%, 142 critics, 250,000 audience score. Critic consensus: provocative and audacious, Dogma is an uneven but thoughtful religious satire that both is respectful and irrelevant. Interesting. So there we go. 70, 85, 80. Chase Hiker, the blue futon. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm one of these Futontopia. You blue Tony. Take watch a great day. Watch the tape tomorrow, a week, for a month, and a year from now. We're just going to freak one of you. Peace and love. Peace and love. And what do you think of Dogma and Kevin Smith's filmography overall?